So first off, I want to start off with some facts. One fact that I didn't have on my paper that the doctor said is that our percentages of infection and positive tests are going down every week since school started. The other statistic I didn't have was that if we have 919 students tested positive and we have 60,000 students, that's 0.015%. The CDC study analyzed 90,000 elementary school students in 169 schools in Georgia, found no significant difference in the schools that required masks compared to those that did not. Dr. Macri of Johns Hopkins Hospital studied 48,000 children under the age of 18, found that the mortality rate among children is 0 without a pre-existing condition such as leukemia. Students have a greater risk of dying on the way to school than they do of dying of COVID. According to the CDC's mortality and morbidity report that was updated weekly, children aged 5 to 14, 0.2% chance of dying of COVID, 0.7 chance of dying by homicide, 1.5 of dying by suicide. That's our real pandemic right there that we need to be looking out for. 0.3 from the flu or pneumonia. So the risk of death is greater from the flu, yet we have never masked or quarantined the first couple months of school when we have pink eye, strep, flu, pneumonia, hand, foot, and mouth, and everything else. Matter of fact, the risk of death by COVID, and this is according to the CDC's report, is equal to the risk of suffocation. We know, though, that masks have a serious toll on mental health. Makes students harder to understand, makes it harder for them to understand what's being said to them. It hinders their ability to empathize with their peers. I mean, God gave us a face for a reason. There's a direct link between children being able to empathize with their peers and their parents and their mental health. From the summer of 2019 to the summer of 2020, there was a 22.3% spike in ER visits from potential suicide for young adults. So why, knowing all this, are we masking children at school? Because I don't think it's to protect the kids. I think it's because we have people at home afraid of catching it from the kids. And if we're going to place that burden on the students, then shame on you. The people that have at home, they've got tools at their disposal. They can get the shot if they want to, or, here's a novel idea, work on boosting their immunity. Or better yet, if they're scared that they're going to get something from their kid, they can mask their kid at home. When the kid gets home from school, slap a mask on them if they're that afraid of their child. The majority of students that I know that are quarantined because an adult at home has it, or an adult at home gave it to them, not because they're catching it at school. So we need to leave the students alone. This decision that you're making needs to be made using our heads and not our emotions. It needs to be based on facts and not opinions. And it needs to be made remembering that we live in America, and a school board does not need to overreach and infringe on the rights of parents to raise kids the way they see fit. Thank you.
I'm here today to speak out against mask mandates. As you will see in the data that I've provided, numbers and facts say it all. There's probably more deaths of cancer patients and children, leukemia, that sort of nature going on, and nobody's putting those things out. So I pulled this also from a reliable website. I'm going to read it straight from the paper. You know, the doctor didn't even have any clue about this and stated something that was just totally false and misinformation. So many of American peer nations around the world, including the UK, Ireland, all of Scandinavia, France, and the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Italy, have exempted kids with varying age cutoffs from wearing masks in classrooms. Conspicuously, there's no evidence of more breakouts in schools in those countries relative to schools in the U.S., where the solid majority of kids wore masks for the entire academic year of 2020, and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. These countries, along with the World Health Organization, whose child masking guidance differs substantially from the CDC recommendations, have explicitly recognized that the decision to mask students carries with it potential academic and social harms for children and may lack a clear benefit. To date, the highly transmittable Delta variant has not led them to change their calculus. Many experts spoke with me and told the Delta variant represents a major and concerning new development in COVID pandemic. It probably shouldn't change our thinking on a mask requirement for schools. That comes from all those countries that are not the U.S. For some reason, the U.S. wants to do everything, the opposite of everybody else. But another thing that's also kind of common sense, they wore masks all year in 2020. Doesn't that suppress the immune system and doesn't allow them to breathe in oxygen and nutrients and things that are also traveling in the air that can help build their immune system? That might be causing a lot of the sickness and illness that's going around this year. It's kind of like an infant that goes into a brand new daycare, never been sick right at the age of 2, and then all of a sudden they're coming home with RSV, coming home with the cold, running nose constantly. Why? Because they're missing vitamins, because they're not around other children. They're stuck at home all day with us only and being outside. So guess what? They're going into school, contracting different illnesses, getting sick all the time. I mean, it's just common sense. I don't have to be a doctor with a doctorate's degree to know that. So my finishing speech right now is also something else. It's a historical piece. It's 2,300 years ago, long before Islam. Arabs discovered that forcing people to cover their nose and mouths broke both will and individuality, and therefore depersonalized them. It made them submissive. That's why they imposed on every woman a mandatory use of a fabric over her face. Then Islam turned it into a woman's symbol of submission to Allah, the king and the man of the harem. Modern psychology explains it. Without a face, we do not exist. And as independent beings, I'm almost done, the child looks in the mirror between the ages of 2 and 3 and discovers himself or herself as an independent being. The mask is the beginning of deleting individuality. He who knows not his history is condemned to repeat it. Industrial militia.
I don't know what else to add to what has already been described as oversight by the board. And I appreciate you, John Aguero, for your comments. The one thing that we have to focus on is we don't want to have our kids wearing muzzles all day long. I've listened to your arguments, and I've noticed that they're missing a few things. And namely, that's evidence, data, and science, common sense, but most of all, basic human decency. COVID poses almost no risk to our kids at all. 4.2 million children have tested positive for COVID, a total of 0.008%, with 334 of them dying. It's certainly confirmed also by our guest, Dr. Alexander. 480 kids died of the flu in the 2018-2019 season. That's more than have died from COVID in a year and a half. Now, did anyone on this board ever suggest masks, whether they be the cloth ones that you distributed freely amongst the students, or the N95 mask during that heavy flu season? I don't think that you did. So which is more dangerous, COVID or the flu? It's child abuse, pure and simple. What's happening now to Munchausen by proxy, which is a mental health illness that occurs when someone makes up medical illnesses in a person under their care? What if a parent forced his kid to wear a football helmet all day, every day, for fear of falling coconuts and meteors? If you saw that, you would say he's abusive. The same holds true here. Considering the psychological damage that we are doing to our children by teaching them that the air is toxic, that everyone around them is sick. Hence the reason why the lady over here who discussed the suicide rate increase. Will we be complicit in increased suicide? The psychological impact that it has upon our children. And I ask you, the board, if you accept that liability. I feel as though sometimes you make it to feel better about yourselves and to protect yourselves politically. The child's mask is a symbolic security blanket for you, not them. And that's been proven through data. The sole reason for the militant push to wear masks is to provide only visible indication that there was some kind of event happening. Without people wearing masks everywhere they went, there would have been absolutely zero indication that there was even an alleged virus to begin with. The mask was just a psychological reinforcement tool, a prop, and it served no other function. And that has been confirmed by the doctor that was on the phone. I also wanted to present, and if you're interested in data...
Mr. Baker,
yes?
I'm sorry, you're 3 minutes up. If you
Thank you very much.
Wrap.
But I do have data to support that the NIH did come out with that supports the masks and why school districts are doing what they're doing. But I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Before my time starts, let me prepare my workstation.
Jason, while he's cleaning, Jason Dodson will be on deck and up next.
I'll leave this here if anyone else needs it. My name is Mark Peters. I'm at 4315 Beale Court, Kissimmee, 34746. Now, the reason I demonstrated cleaning my workstation, everyone who came up here, either if they wore a mask, they still were touching the surface. They were still doing everything, spitting all this mic like I am doing right now. You guys, when you spoke, even Dr. Pace, some of you, took off your mask, like the attorney, and spoke. We just heard that the doctor said someone infected an entire class just by removing their mask to read. So you guys just did what they're saying not to do. Now, if you wanna, last views a few weeks ago, or not very long actually, 23rd, it was brought up by a board member to implement a mask mandate with an option, but yet decided that high school did not need it, like all our high schoolers are vaccinated. And we know that high schoolers are susceptible to this virus as anyone else. But yet we made following in the steps of our big brother, Orange County. It seems like we can't make up our mind on our own unless we go what they say. So they made a mandate today, so let's do it too. And that's what we do, we follow in their steps. Why can't we chart our own course? Let me just read what the CDC says here, and Dr. Pace actually put it on the screen before. Due to the circulating and highly contagious Delta variant, CDC recommends. I know you guys are board members and this is a school board. So words, very important. Whenever children take tests, how a sentence is structured, the particular words play a role in how that answer is given. So the word recommends, let me just briefly state what recommends mean. Recommend, dictionary definition, to represent or urge as advisable, to advise as an alternative, to suggest. But you guys want to take a recommendation and make it a mandate. Let me just tell you what mandate means. It has nothing to do with recommend. It says to authorize or decree as the enactment of law, to order or require. So you're changing what the CDC, as someone just stated, the CDC spent $1 billion to make a recommendation. Now let me just say one thing. The CDC also passed a law recently that got actually pulled back because they didn't have a place to pass law, but they ordered the entire nation to not evict tenants who are not paying rent. They ordered because they wanted to protect people. If they wanted to protect us and they say mask is important, wouldn't they order mask as well? But they didn't do that. They recommended because they don't have evidence to back up that mask. By the way, let me just display what mask is. You all are wearing masks, most of you, that are cloth, made by someone that Target sells this. This one here we order online. It comes in different amounts in a box. We pay an average of 50 cents.
Mr. Peter, your time is up if you want to wrap it up.
So I just want to let you know that your mandate is not flying.
Thank you.
I just want to speak as a father, as a single father. I'm a paying member of society. I contribute to society. I'm also a good dad. It is my choice, what is best for my daughter. I don't care what anybody says, down from the top all the way down to the bottom. My choice is what's going on with my daughter. You guys don't get that choice, and nobody is allowed to tell me what my daughter's going to wear at the school. I accepted the fact that we were supposed to wear uniforms. And that was fine because everybody looks respectful. I agreed with it, but this is too far. You can say what you want to say to the country and to adults, but when you start going after the kids and using that to push your agendas, now I have a problem with that. And I want to remind you where you get your paychecks from. The last time I checked, y'all worked for me. And I want y'all to do what I say to do, not the other way around. And for the record, when condoms and birth control are 100% effective, then I'll start wearing a mask. Good
evening, school board and fellow citizens. Point one, masks have not and do not protect against COVID. In an interview at 60 Minutes on March 8, 2020, Dr. Fauci said, quote, "There is no reason to be walking around with a mask." In the interview, he pointed out, quote, "Wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better. It might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is." Then he named 4 reasons masks are ineffective against COVID. 1, people keep fiddling with the mask. They keep touching their face. 2, people generally use masks that do not seal around the face and are loose-fitting. 3, people do not wear masks properly or consistently. They keep moving the mask up and down and taking it off and on. 4, masks are often worn, put aside, and then reused. These 4 reasons are still true. Point 2, we are now in the lowest point of mortality in the U.S. since the pandemic began. The CDC on August 7th reports that deaths are at the lowest weekly point since March of 2020, 1,170. You didn't know that, did you? Probably because of the media hype about growing case numbers, overcrowded hospitals, and the raging Delta variant. You probably thought the mortality rate was through the roof. It is not. Point 3, the death of any child is horrific, but kids dying from COVID in Florida is below flu levels. 22 children died in Florida in 2020 from flu. Pediatric deaths from COVID in 2020 and 2021 combined, 15. COVID is the least likely cause of death for kids in the U.S. There is a far greater likelihood that a child will die from a vehicle accident or from a homicide or drowning than will die from COVID. Point 4, a large-scale study published by the CDC found that no statistically significant difference in schools that required students to wear masks compared to schools where masks were optional. Considering these facts, first, you should not be mandating masks for children at all, especially with no parental option to choose. Second, stop perpetuating this evil spirit of fear and anxiety that's swallowing our children.
Your time is up.
I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.